Most people in AI are busy building custom N8N automations or vibe coding SaaS clones, but there's actually a huge opportunity that many people are overlooking, which is starting an AI SaaS. In 2025, an entirely new wave of softwares is taking over fast. AI legend Andrej Karpathy just called this wave Software 3.0, softwares that are not just helpful tools, but actually do work for us. And in this video, I'll show you exactly what an AI SaaS actually is, and I'll give you a step-by-step roadmap on how to quickly find ideas, how to build them fast, and how to market them, even if you're a beginner. If you don't know me yet, I'm Ben. I grew my own no-code AI software business to over $500,000 in revenue in 2025. And this video is a quick rundown of the lessons I've learned and what I've seen working for other people around me building AI products. So first cover quickly what an AI SaaS actually is and how to design them. Then a quick and easy method to find AI SaaS ideas fast and some big opportunities I think you have right now. Then how to get customers to validate your ideas and your product. Then which tools to use to build an AI SaaS really fast. And then how to design and build an AI SaaS that doesn't compete with ChatGPT and actually delivers value to customers. So what is the difference between a SaaS and an AI SaaS? If we look at it in a very simplified way and we look at traditional SaaS platforms like HubSpot, Apollo, SEMrush, we can think of them mostly helping us in the information layer. So they either present us with new data or existing data in a very user-friendly way in order for us to take decisions and actions faster and better. So if we think about HubSpot, a classic CRM, right, it basically tells you here are 10 leads to follow up with, but you still have to decide which leads to follow up with and actually take the action. Now, what we're seeing new softwares coming up with more and more is first of all to improve that information layer with AI. Platforms like 11x, right, was an AI BDR system. There are many other examples of this. With Day AI, which is going to be an AI native CRM, is first of all, it will improve the information layer because, of course, now we can use AI to actually, instead of just saying here are 10 leads to follow up with, they can actually do the research in the backend, identify the highest potential leads, and tell us and prioritize the best leads. So the information layer is already being improved. But more importantly than that, in this new AI SaaS wave, more and more of the action layer is also being taken over by AI. So besides just saying here are the highest priority leads you have to follow up with today, it can actually do the follow-ups and even in a personalized way. Now, generally, the way we see these AI SaaS being built is to still have the human decision-making layer mostly done by humans, right? Because AI is still pretty unpredictable. And this is also something we have learned. A lot of human in the loop and the decision-making by a human is really important to make these AI SaaS work well, which I'm going to come back to later in this video too. But eventually, more and more, I think these softwares are going to be transferred into AI SaaS 3.0, where even the decision-making layer is going to be taken over more and more by AI. You can imagine when these softwares gather more and more data on how users use these systems and performance data, more and more of the decision-making layer can be taken over by AI too. Of course, there will most likely be some decisions, high-level decisions that humans still will have to make. But again, more and more of that decision-making layer could be taken over by AI. And of course, I'm not saying these softwares don't have AI. Many of these are trying to make the transition, but there's really a new wave of softwares coming up that go AI first, and they're really going to challenge the established players, traditional SaaS players. Now, what I see happening a lot in the AI world, people learning vibe coding, Lovable, Cursor, Cloud Code, is they're building softwares, but I see most people very much focusing on building traditional SaaS faster instead of trying to build AI SaaS. And I think the real opportunity does not lie in building yesterday's software faster, but in building software that was traditionally impossible to build. An interesting thing, I think, which is happening too, of course, you can imagine with this type of SaaS, the seat-based pricing model made a lot of sense because the more people had access to this information, the more people in your organization could take better and faster decisions and actions. But as more and more of the decision and action layer is being taken over by AI, it makes a lot more sense for SaaS and softwares to have outcome-based pricing. So just a quick recap, this is really the gap we're closing, right? Traditional SaaS softwares generally just gave us insights, right? You need to follow up with these clients. And usually there was the human bridge necessary to actually take action. And this can now slowly but surely be taken over more and more by AI. So traditional software stops at insights, AI SaaS completes the journey. Now, besides the mistake of trying to sort of build yesterday's software faster with these coding agents, I also see a lot of people focusing on these quick tools that automate a small task in a workflow. So I see them pop up all the time, like a YouTube transcription tool with AI, etc. But I think the huge opportunity we have it with AI right now is to much more focus on an end-to-end system that delivers as much of an outcome as possible. So instead of an idea generation tool, you most likely want to focus on an end-to-end content system that does strategy generation, idea generation, angle generation, writes the posts, does image generation, automatic publishing. The more of the workflow you can have in your system, the more of an ROI it will drive to the business. And this is really what AI allows us to do right now. Instead of a keyword research tool, you want to go with an end-to-end SEO system, which is of course the system we've built, which does strategy generation, idea generation, keyword research, drafts blog posts, puts in images, publishes on their website, and even does performance analysis. Now, I'm not saying you cannot build a successful tool like this or a traditional SaaS. I'm just saying I think that the biggest opportunity lies here because you drive the most ROI to a business. Now, if you don't have an idea for an AI product or an AI SaaS yet, I want to give you this quick framework that helped me a lot when I first saw it. And that is the following. Most people approach finding product ideas from the solution problem market framework, which is generally a flawed approach, right? So I see this happening a lot too in AI. For example, people learning N8N, they can now build an AI agent or an AI chatbot. So that's the solution they know they can build. Then they think, is there some problem I can solve with this solution? Yeah, sure. I mean, let's say old traditional website chatbots are pretty limited. Maybe I can build a better one. And then they think, which market might need that? Maybe I can help e-commerce businesses with this solution. Now, generally, this is a flawed approach because you're forcing your preferred solution onto problems that might not even exist or are not painful enough for the specific markets to actually pay for. And second, because you're thinking solution first, what you'll generally see is that there are lots of other players that already exist or hundreds of others doing the same. So generally, a far better way to find product ideas is to go to problem market solution framework. And this is the blueprint many of the successful businesses in the world have followed. They were born out of problems. So you can think of your personal life, but ideally your professional life, and what are some of the biggest problems you are facing on a day-to-day in your professional life, right? Then you think, let's say, for example, I work in a marketing agency and I do Facebook ads, and I noticed that creating ad creatives and ad copy is actually a really painful and long process and really impacts the performance of our ad campaigns, right? So that might be a big problem you've identified. Then you think, is there actually a market? Are there other people that really struggle with this? And you go like, yes, most marketing agencies have this pain point. And then you build a solution around this. Now, let's say you don't have a big pain point in your day-to-day or they're unsolvable. It's hard to build a solution around them. Then there's a third approach, which is definitely a good approach too, which is go market problem solution. And in this case, you can think of a specific market first, ideally one you have experience in. So maybe you've worked in or you know something about. But even if you don't have the experience, you can still follow this method. So you choose a market. So let's say I know e-commerce very well. Then you identify the biggest problems. Let's say I've worked in an e-commerce that my business had in that time. You think, list out all the problems. What are the biggest problems? And from there, is there something I can build a solution around, right? But even if you don't have that professional background or experience, you can still pick a market, learn inside of communities, talk to people about what their biggest problems are, and from there come to a solution. And that's why I think if you don't have that much professional expertise or you don't know an industry very well, the AI automation agency is actually a very good way to potentially find product ideas, because as an AI automation agency, you're really starting to understand different markets, their biggest problems, and you're already being paid to build solutions. So that's the point I make in my last video too, about how to scale an AI business. So if you want to learn more about that approach, then check out my last video. And now that we have AI, a new layer is added to this framework, which makes it far more powerful and gives us almost infinite new opportunities. Because every time we have a new technological revolution, like the internet, the phone, and now with AI, we have a big update or something new almost every month with image generation APIs, video generation, LLMs becoming powerful, more powerful by the day, MCP. Every time we have a new technology like this, it allows us instantly to build thousands, if not millions, of new solutions that were previously not possible to build. Second, it will also allow us to solve far bigger problems. It will allow us to solve new problems that were previously impossible to solve, and it will also create new problems that didn't exist before. And thirdly, because there's a new technology, there's instant market demand. The market knows they need to adopt this new technology. Think when the phone came out or the internet came out, every company now needed to be online, needed to be on an app, needed to have an app, needed to have a website. So there's instant market demand. So with a new revolution like AI, we have thousands, if not 10,000s of markets. We have hundreds, if not thousands of problems. So we literally have millions of new opportunities for solutions we can build. So with literally millions of new opportunities, how do you focus on the right opportunities? First of all, you really want to focus on the highest value opportunities. And in general, the highest value opportunities are, first of all, in B2B. B2C is definitely possible too, but I'd recommend sticking to B2B. And you want to focus on a business' most expensive problems, right? And revenue generating processes or solutions and labor intensive processes are a good place to start thinking about ideas, especially now that we have AI and automation, because we can really make an impact for businesses in these two sort of sections or problems. You can see this happening, right? Many successful AI products at the moment are focusing on these, right? For example, there are multiple of these AI BDR solutions, which I mentioned before. Also, we have quite a lot of these softwares that focus on automating customer service because, of course, it's very labor intensive. And if you don't know where to start, I think a huge opportunity in AI right now is to think about what service agencies deliver. Because generally, agency services are pretty expensive. They usually focus on revenue generating services. And now that we have AI, we can really start thinking of productizing some of these traditional services to deliver AI products that generate revenue. Think ad systems for e-commerce, SEO systems for SEO agencies, content systems for coaches. Poppy AI is a great example of a SaaS that's getting a lot of traction right now, and it helps, for example, creators create content fast, because that's one of the biggest and most expensive problems for us, I can tell you from personal experience. Now, the other approach, of course, to getting to potentially an AI product is, of course, to start out as a custom AI automation agency, which is the approach I took, which eventually led us to build our AI SEO product. And I think an interesting strategy there, which I highly recommend you do if you potentially want to build an AI product, is to target those service agencies, right? This is exactly the approach I took, because if you think about it, the great thing with service providers like marketing agencies, etc., is they generally already have the processes and the systems in place. They already know how to deliver outcomes to businesses. In general, there are revenue generating outcomes or processes, and they already have the domain expertise. So if you help them automate their processes and potentially productize it, you can safely assume this really drives outcomes for businesses. So you already have that domain expertise from them. And second, agencies are generally very labor intensive, right? So you can save a lot of costs for businesses in the long term. And this is exactly the approach I took, right? I learned a lot while building custom automations for SEO agencies, and eventually that led to me being able to build an AI SEO product that really delivers an outcome to businesses. So if you have an idea, how do you build a good product? And I just heard Mark Zuckerberg explain it very well. The faster you can get the user feedback to product iteration loop, the faster you can get to building a valuable product. And this, when you're starting out, really requires a marketing first or an audience first approach. It's very cliche, but true. The recipe for failure is to build out a perfect product for 6 months just based on your idea and then go to market, because user feedback actually builds good products. And this marketing first approach has 3 big advantages. First, you validate demand before over-engineering your product. Second, you build what people actually want instead of what you think people want. And 3, you're building distribution or marketing skills from day one, which is going to be the key to making an AI product actually work. And of course, now the product building and product iteration stage is really revolutionized right now with these coding agents and no-code tools, because we can speed up this loop by 10x or if not more through these tools, and we can also build prototypes much faster. So that brings up the question, should you build a product before going out to the market? Now, my recommendation is, if you already identified a specific problem of your target audience, right, then you can build a very quick 1 or 2 feature MVP, right, minimum viable product, or a very quick prototype, right? If you don't know a problem yet, but you've chosen, let's say, a specific industry you know something about, then I would take the approach of trying to sell AI automation services and let the market come to you and tell you their biggest problems, which can eventually lead into you finding product ideas. Then the next step is to really go out to the market, right? And your goal here is to find audience message fit, right? And you want to keep this as simple and as lean as easy for you to do as possible, but you want to validate the traction for your potential solution and learn from users on what to actually build. So the easiest way you can do this is by just setting up a very quick landing page. And what you want to do is you want to call out, first of all, your target audience, right? Your market. Make sure that you're calling them out as specific as possible. If you already identified a problem and you have an MVP or a prototype, you want to add the problem and the solution also in your messaging, because the better you can identify their problem and the solution you offer, the more traction you're going to see. And now the huge advantage we have with AI is if we mention AI, it will automatically almost generate more interest, right? So even if you don't have a specific problem and a solution yet, you haven't built this prototype, this is the amazing opportunity we have in AI right now. Is even if you're just saying, I do AI automations for e-commerce businesses, you can already sort of see traction, which was traditionally, if there's not a new technology, it's very hard to do, because generally you have to really call out their pain points or their problems and the solutions you offer. So you want to set up a very quick landing page. I recommend Framer, Webflow, I personally use. You can also use tools like Lovable to spin up a landing page very quickly. And then you want to go out to the market and validate that demand, right? And learn from your users. So you can use cold email, you can use paid ads, you can use your network, you can use content on social media, but really you want to go out there and validate your audience message feed, right? So you can call out multiple problems too if you're not completely sure, to test out which gets the most traction, etc. But you really want to keep this simple, iterate, find the right message, send them to a landing page where you either have a wait list where they can just leave their email, or a Calendly link so you can actually talk to them. You can, what a good strategy is in general is to ask for feedback. So you can give the tool for free, for example, in return for feedback. So you can learn how to build on top and make your solution or product better in the initial phases. And once you have a better product or a better idea on what to build, you can eventually, of course, start charging. So how do you build AI products? So I'll first cover the core infrastructure for AI products, then the tools I recommend using when building them, and then I'll cover how to design AI products the right way. Now, the core infrastructure is no different than traditional software, right? We have a backend, we have a database, and a front end. Now, the big difference is in the backend, of course, we're using lots more AI and AI workflows. Now, one mistake, or one, I think, pitfall many people fall into, especially non-coders, is now that we have these tools like Claude Code and Lovable, etc., is they decide to build out the entire product through code right away. And of course, through these coding agents, it becomes a lot easier for us to build this. But I still, especially if you're a non-coder, highly recommend to stick with no code when you're just starting and building your first prototypes and your first systems. Why? Because you do slow down the product iteration loop, right? You want to keep that as agile and fast as possible. Because if you want to make a change, which you're constantly going to have to do when you're just building out your product and having your first customers, even with the coding agents, making adjustments to the backend, database, and front end is going to take quite some time. And you can also not check the code if you're not a coder. So it's going to be hard to know if it's actually production ready, to know where the errors are, etc. So highly recommend sticking to no code when you're just building it out, especially now that we have platforms like N8N, which are very solid infrastructures for building sort of your MVP backend for these AI products. The second mistake I see many people making, mostly in the AI space, who are maybe doing the AI automation agency, many completely ignore the fact of front ends. So a lot of these AI automation systems are being delivered in databases or raw spreadsheets. Now, I highly recommend you get used to building some front ends, right? Because front ends are really what the client and the customer is going to use with your automation system. So if you have a simple front end, a decent front end, the perceived value of your system or your AI system really goes up 10x instantly, because it really feels like they're getting a little bit of a product. And secondly, it will really help you if you potentially want to productize. You getting in the habit of building front ends for your systems is really going to help you potentially productize. So what is the tool stack that I recommend you start out with when building an AI product? It's the one we use for our AI SEO product, which is the backend in N8N, the database in Airtable, and the front end in Airtable interfaces. Now, the huge upside of this setup, in my opinion, is that this has the fastest product iteration loop, right? And you really want to keep that flexibility when you're building your system out, right? So because you can basically build an automation system in N8N in a couple of hours. You can set up a database in Airtable in a couple of minutes and build a front end on top of that in the same software in literally minutes too. So you keep that product iteration loop really, really fast. Well, if you use a software maybe like Lovable and you build out your front end in custom code with a database and Supabase, etc., every iteration or change you're going to make is going to take you a lot longer than if you use this setup. So I highly recommend this setup in the initial stages. And you might say, okay, this is a great setup maybe for your a prototype or your first MVP, but we've actually scaled our business to over $500,000 in revenue with still having this setup, right? So you can actually scale this. Now, the business model we use is we actually sell the entire package or the product and install it onto their computer. So we sell it at a high one-off fee price, basically sort of like the old software days. Now, of course, if you want to build this into a more recurring sort of SaaS type business model, this will probably not be the right setup, because you can't really use an Airtable interface as a SaaS, right? You can't integrate payments, etc. And there are some limitations to using N8N as a SaaS and a database. But if you're building out your product, I think this is a great setup. And we're not the only one using this setup. Stefan Pope, a fellow YouTube creator, also created an AI content system with the same setup. And there's some other examples. I can show you very quickly our AI SEO system. So you can see this is our dashboard, our Airtable front end. And as you can see, it doesn't look, probably you can build something nicer in something like Lovable, but it's very much 80-20, I think. It looks very good. And you can make these iterations really, really fast. I'm going to walk you through the SEO system in more details in a second when I talk about how to design good AI products. But just to give you an idea of the front end you can build, I also have a full tutorial on the setup on how to build a system like this from scratch in one of my previous videos. I'll make sure to link it up here too if you're interested. I'll basically teach the step-by-step process of setting up an AI product with these 3 tools. Now you can see here we have the N8N backend, right? It's quite big right now, but we've built this up and iterated a lot over the last couple of months. And we basically started out with something which is probably like 25% of this. So that's the huge advantage of having N8N as a backend. You can add on top and iterate on your backend really fast and quickly. Another example I just saw on this one is from some guys here who build a content system here on Airtable. You can see it looks pretty good too. But there's multiple people using this setup to sell AI products. Now, if the downside, of course, of this setup is that, first of all, you can't really make this into a SaaS, right? Because you have it in Airtable interfaces. So if you want to go the SaaS route, I'm going to give you some other recommendations of tools to use. Second, because we are selling the actual product onto the computer of our customer, we don't have access to their performance data, which of course is a big thing you're missing when you're using this business model. But it could still be good in the initial stages because you really get a good cash flow if you use this business model we are using, right? And eventually maybe transition into a SaaS, right? And the other downside is if you use Airtable as a database, you do have some limitations with the amount of records you can store, etc. So if you really want to go the SaaS route, I'd say in the MVP stage, you probably cannot use Airtable, so you want to explore some of these tools, right? So NoLoco, Glide, Softer, Retool, and Crossed AI are basically no-code tools to build front ends a little bit quicker than with traditional code, maybe. And you still have more flexibility and customization than a tool like Airtable interfaces. Now, some of these tools also have built-in databases that are a bit more scalable than Airtable or Google Sheets, etc. But these generally also have native integrations with popular databases like Supabase, Airtable, so you can link them directly to your existing databases, or you can build a database directly into these softwares. Now, the advantage of these softwares is you can basically integrate Stripe, logins, really fast and easily. So if you want to go the SaaS route and you want to start MVP and have that fast product iteration loop, I highly recommend checking out these tools. Retool and Glide are generally more focused on internal app building. I like NoLoco and Softer if you want to keep it flexible and lean. And Crossed AI is one that goes mobile first, right? So if your app or your product is going to be mobile first, then it's worth exploring this one. And of course, you can use other databases too, right? You're not limited to these. Now, if you really want to go the code route for your front end, then you can explore tools like Claude Code, right? Lovable, Cursor, Bolt. Then you probably have to switch your database to something a bit more scalable. Many of these have native integrations. I know Lovable with Supabase, for example, but then you can really start using databases like Postgres, etc. Now, keep in mind that if you go the custom code route, right, the product iterations are going to take a bit longer. Even though we have these coding agents, making a change in your backend in N8N will take some time updating the database structure, and from there the custom front end. So this product iteration loop, you do slow down a bit, but of course you have the upside of having a lot more flexibility in your front end, and the database is a lot more scalable. Now, if you're starting out with this, I still recommend keeping your backend on N8N, at least in the early stages, right? Because there are some limitations to really running a SaaS on N8N. You probably don't want to do it, but with your first customers and when you're building a product, I still highly recommend keeping your backend on N8N because you keep that flexibility, and the most changes you will make in those early stages are on the back end, right? So I think stick to N8N, and then really when you're getting some traction and you're really going to build your SaaS, then of course you want to go with a custom backend too. Now, the interesting thing you can do now is, of course, if you've built it out in N8N, you can now feed the N8N JSON to something like Claude Code, etc., to sort of build that backend system in custom code quite quick. But I would only move here if you have an engineering team and really have that early product market fit, right? Because of course, product iterations are now going to take a lot longer. I'm going to launch a full tutorial on how to set up a custom front ends with Claude Code. I've been experimenting a lot with these tools, and in my experience, Claude Code is by far the best. So I'm going to do a step-by-step tutorial on how to set up a system like this. So how do you build a good AI product? Now, first of all, to start with, how do you build a product that does not compete with ChatGPT? If you're building AI products, you're almost automatically going to be compared to ChatGPT. So it's really important that your tool offers more value than ChatGPT. And a good way to think about this is, what are some of the limitations of ChatGPT? Because there definitely are some downsides to it still, right? So the first ones are, of course, LLMs are generally still not perfect, right? They are unpredictable. There are some hallucinations. So the way we go around that is by building lots of human in the loop in the system, which I'll get to later in this section too. Then the second thing is, typing can actually be a really inefficient way to execute on a process. You just think of yourself, how many times you have to re-explain a same thing you're trying to do in ChatGPT over and over again to ChatGPT. So we can actually build an interface that's much easier to use for a specific process, right? Which I'm going to get to in a second too. Then we also have a problem of having limited context inside of ChatGPT, both on the process, the specific process you're trying to execute. So let's say, again, we take our SEO as an example. ChatGPT might not know exactly what the best way to do SEO is, right? It might not have all the context around what the best process is around doing SEO, or the context on how to do SEO for your company, right? And the second big downside there is also has limited user context, right? Think of how many times you had to explain ChatGPT about your personal situation, about your business, about the exact process you're trying to do. So we want to integrate that into our system, right? And have that integrated, proven process, that domain expertise on how this workflow should be executed, integrated into our system. And lastly, we don't have continuous learning in these systems. So that's something we can really start building into our AI products, right? Is where we're capturing decision-making data and performance data, which slowly but surely creates a moat around our product, where we really have more data to execute on this specific workflow than ChatGPT. So I'll go over each of these in more detail. So the first thing you want to keep in mind, and Andrej Karpathy talked about this in his last talk, Software 3.0. I highly recommend checking out that video. He explains it a lot better than me, probably. But the key here to keep in mind is, the way we want to design AI products at the moment is by having lots of human in the loop, right? And he shows it basically with an autonomy slider, right? We want to start out very much on the left side. We want to keep a lot of human involvement in the beginning phases, and slowly but surely we can have more autonomous systems, but we really want to start out here when we're just building our first products, right? And the way we design this is by having lots of human in the loop, and basically the way you can see it is we have the human as the verifier and the AI as the generator, right? So human manager, right? AI executioner. That's really how we can see these AI products. And the faster you can get this loop, the more value you can provide to your customer. So we really want to keep this loop as fast as possible. And the way to speed this up, for example, in comparison to ChatGPT, is by having less typing to do, having a better sort of internal prompting into your system where the AI generation is better. But we really want to try to keep this loop as fast as possible. And the big upside of having lots of human in the loop in these AI products is, first of all, and this is something we've learned too while building our AI SEO product, is most people still want to be in control. They don't want to have a perfectly automated, because first of all, we cannot perfectly automate things, but people still want to be in control of making decisions, right? Especially important decisions. So they don't want a system that automatically finds ideas, creates blog posts, posts them on their website, etc., without ever checking or verifying what's actually being done. And the second big problem we solve here is the edge case problem. If you've been building automation solutions, you know you can probably spin up an automation workflow quite quick. The hardest thing is actually building the solution or the infrastructure around edge cases, which you will always have, right? Because optimizing these systems for edge cases is actually where you're going to spend the bulk of your time. So this human in the loop sort of setup really gets around that edge case problem because the human is still the verifier. So you don't have to design a over-engineer a perfect system that resolves all of the edge cases. The human can just sort of spot them and decide to not go ahead with the edge cases, right? The third thing it really avoids, it avoids the LLM problems we still have, right? LLMs can still be unpredictable. They can produce hallucinations. They're not perfect yet, right? And because we have the human verification and lots of human in the loop, the human can go around the problems of LLMs at the moment. And lastly, this sort of setup gives you a lot of data on how your users use the system, how they make decisions, which eventually you can add into your system to really make it more autonomous, right? And slowly but surely, once you have more performance data and user decision-making data, you can make it more autonomous, which I'll get to in a second. So the way you want to build this out is not by building an enormous workflow, right, that automates the entire process, right? We've all seen it, right? The 100 node N8N workflows or 20 AI agent team, me including, right? It's really exciting to build these systems, but it's a blueprint for disaster, right? LLMs are not perfect yet. We're unpredictable. And these sort of setups just become really, really error prone and not production ready, especially for AI products. So the way we want to approach this, and I highly recommend taking this approach, even if you're building custom solutions for clients, but especially when you're building products, is to really build as granular as possible and have as much human in the loop as possible. So the way you can look at this is understand the process, break the process down into the smallest tasks, and then build a separate automation for each one. And then you can bundle them into a product, right? And this is also the way you can start very lean and with a small prototype by just having, let's say, 2 or 1 automation task, and then you can easily add on top of this, right? Without affecting all of the previous automation workflows you've built, right? So if you take a content system, right, think of a content process. It's not just writing a post right away, right? There's actually lots of smaller steps in between. So we want to first go with idea generation, then with maybe angle generation, right? Give a few options to the user, let them choose, then a few options of writing the posts, let the user choose, then a few options of images, let the user choose and iterate, right? So we really want to build granular. Don't try to automate that entire workflow in one go, right? That will make it a lot easier for you to build these AI products. It's by basically having sort of this one webhook that connects to our database. And then we have a switch node here that basically connects all of these smaller workflows in the smaller automation tasks inside of the larger workflow. So instead of trying to automate the entire content creation process in SEO in one go, which will be extremely error prone, we break up the entire workflow of doing SEO into very granular steps and tasks. And in each of these tasks, a human verifies the output, takes the decision, makes the iteration if necessary, and executes on the next task in the workflow, right? So really try to break it down. And the huge upsides of this is, first of all, you will have less errors. You have way faster iterations when you're building this, because if something goes wrong in one specific part of the automation, you can just go in there, resolve it without affecting the entire rest of the automation solution. You can easily add features on top of your existing system. You'll have more data, right? You can log the user decision-making data. You have better user experience because humans are more in control, and you'll have less errors. And you can also make this system eventually self-improving, which I'll get to in a second. So the way we generally set these systems up, and I can show you quickly in the N8N here, since my picture there, we already have expanded it, as you can see. And of course, you don't have to start out here, right? We started with 25% or 20% of this entire workflow. And through feedback and product updates, we've slowly but surely expanded the system into this. And now it really takes care of the entire SEO sort of process. But the first step in this automation is sort of that context generation. Again, these systems you don't want to design as a one-size-fits-all. We do want to give the system context on the business, right? SEO requires context on a business to write good content. It needs a strategy for this specific business, right? So this is generally what we do, and this is not only for SEO, this is the same for content, right? If you're producing content, you need the system to have context around your business, about the strategy, about the target audience they're trying to reach. So the way we design this is by having these sort of first workflows is always the context generation for this specific client. So these parts of the automation is just doing that. And I'll show you how that works in the front end. So I'll open the Airtable here. So basically here in this SEO project setup, what we have is company information. So here a company can put in their information, their name and their URL. And instead of us telling them, hey, write out your strategy and your business overview, etc. yourself. We try to make it lots easier for the user. So we generate an initial draft of the strategy and their business overview through scraping and AI. And from there, the user can make adjustments, etc. But the important thing is we have that context here now. You see the system automatically generates this business overview and SEO strategy. The user can still adapt this, but this will then feed into all the subsequent workflows to give the system context on this specific business, which is really going to improve the output, right? Combined, of course, with our domain expertise around SEO and how to actually write good articles, etc. But this is really a key ingredient for these AI products, right? It doesn't mean it's a one size fits all. It needs the context on each specific business, but make it as easy as possible for the user. And the same here. We have, for example, each company might have a different CMS, right? But again, we make it easy for them, right? They can just choose their CMS. They can put in their API keys even, and our system will automatically then connect that, right? So this is sort of the setup we use in that first step. Let me go back to the presentation. And then from there, you can really start automating the workflow, right? Task by task. So you have, for example, idea generation first. You generate 30 or 40 ideas. Then the human chooses, verifies, and chooses the one they want to go ahead with, right? Again, you go in the next stage. Our SEO system, by the way, is far more granular than what I'm saying right now, but I just want to keep it easy. Then the third step might be drafting the blog post. Again, you let the human verify before taking the next action, which is adding in the images or doing the keyword research, right? Human verifies. And what we're testing right now too, and what we've just built into our system is even having performance analytics. So basically, our system checks now for how these blog posts have been performing, checks which ones have been performing best, makes a report on it. And that report we can then use as context generation again when we execute the workflow again. And that's how we can sort of start building a self-improving system too. So I think this part is really interesting to focus on any solution you build. If you can have some performance analytics in there, you can really start building self-improving products. Anyway, if you want to learn more about how our SEO product exactly is set up, I do have a full tutorial on our SEO system too. It's a little bit outdated, but I think it will give you a good idea. So that's it for the backend, right? Keep it really granular. Again, you don't have to start out with a huge workflow. Start out with one or two of these, right? And you can build from there. And that's really how you build the prototype too. Now, for the database, again, right, you want to keep it really easy and fast to iterate and adapt, because any change you're going to make there in your end-to-end workflow, your database is going to be affected. That's why I'm such a big fan of starting with databases like Airtable, because you're really flexible. You can make changes really fast. So because the database is really the core of your AI product, right? And therefore, fast iteration is key, right? I can show you very quickly how this looks in the backend. So you can see this is the database where the front end is built on top of. Right, and you can see it's quite straightforward. And then we separate it through tables for each of the parts of the processes of doing SEO. Right, bottom funnel, middle of the funnel, top of funnel content. Here we have tech audit. And here we can set up all the different companies you want to do SEO for, etc. Again, if you want to learn more about how to set up this entire infrastructure and how to build an MVP, I do have that full tutorial on how to build it from scratch. So that's it for the database. Now for the front end. Again, same here, right? You want to have a front end that's easy and fast to iterate and adapt, because again, any change you're going to make in the back end and in the database will have to be reflected in your front end. And if you have some solution custom code, it's going to take you a lot longer. That's why I'm such a fan of the combination of Airtable and Airtable interfaces. Second, you want to have lots of human in the loop. This is really one of the biggest lessons, and what Andre Karpathy says too, right, is human in the loop is the way you want to design these AI products at the moment, and to go around the issues of AI that we still have. And lastly, to really have a better user experience than ChatGPT, you should design your user interface as much as possible around just clicking, right? Just choosing and clicking instead of writing, data entry, chatting, etc. Right? And that's how you make the user experience a lot better, by having a proven system and by having an easy and fast to use user interface. You get better results and faster results than with ChatGPT. And that's really how we can stand out and make our product differentiate from ChatGPT. Right. So again, if I show an example, so if I can show you example quickly, if I go back to the Airtable. So the way we do it here is in Airtable with just quick actions, right? Here, for example, it generates ideas for blog posts with a little bit of a description. I choose which one I want to go ahead with. If I have decided to go ahead on a specific one, I just click here on generate content. Right, the generated content will be presented here. again, I can analyze the generated content. Normally, I can then decide to actually publish it, but again, I have the human in the loop. I can verify everything, right? I can verify the images, right? I can make changes if I want to, but if I don't, I just click a button and it will be published, right? I can even schedule the date, etc. So you want to keep it as fast and easy as possible for the user. Instead of them typing, yes, you can now publish, etc. And I see that happening a lot. Now that we have agents, people are designing a lot of these systems where you have to talk. But if you're automating or really resolving a specific workflow, it should be really easy for the user with clicks to go through that workflow instead of chatting. Now, lastly, how do you slowly but surely build more of a data moat, right? And how do you make your system more and more autonomous over time, which this is where I think AI SaaS is heading more and more. Once your system or your SaaS or your product receives more and more performance data from more and more clients, of course, you can build this into the system, right? And this will really help you sort slowly but surely autonomize the solution, right? You're also logging, ideally, decision-making data. So the way, if you're logging this decision-making data and the performance data, you can slowly but surely first take the first action, which is a little bit more autonomous, which is adding suggestions in the interface. If you already know which sort of ideas they generally pick, you can start adding suggestions in the interface. You can steer the system towards more of those types of ideas. And eventually, once you get more and more performance data, you can start automating some of the decision making in your system to make it more autonomous. Most likely for the high level decisions, you still want to have human in the loop, but you can definitely start automating more and more of the process, right? And this is again what Andre Karpathy talked about, that slowly but surely you can have this autonomy slider, right, where it becomes more and more autonomous. Now, just to finish it off, if you still don't know where to start, a big opportunity again that I see is going after the service industry, right? Especially the tech service industry, meaning marketing agencies, lead gen agencies, because they focus on revenue generating systems, right? Because this is really one of the most expensive problems companies have that they're already paying for and can bring them high ROI, and to not compete with the big players in the market. And I think there's a huge opportunity of focusing on niches, right? Really small niches, building these systems for small niches. I think you have a very interesting value proposition, because if you focus on these small niches, you'll not necessarily compete with the big players like 11x, etc. Right? If you build a great email outreach system for one specific industry, like dentists or e-commerce, you can definitely provide more value than some of these bigger players, and especially than ChatGPT. So think email outreach systems for e-commerce, LinkedIn content systems for business coaches, ad generation systems for dentists, SEO systems for local businesses. Just a few examples, but I think you get the idea. Anyway, that's it for this video. Again, if you want to learn how to build sort of your first MVP with this setup, I have that full tutorial, which I'll link up here too. And if you got any value out of this video, I highly appreciate a like and subscribe. And if you want to work closer with me and my team, get some one-on-one tech help to build out your first solution, you can also check out my community where we try to help you set up your AI business. That's it for this video. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.